Welcome to the Love, Sex, and Leadership podcast, where you can discover simple tantric teachings to embody your true power, awaken your soul's wisdom, and live an inspired life as a natural, intuitive, and heart-centered leader. Welcome, everyone, to this conversation for love, sex, and leadership. I am super inspired and excited to have a dear brother, a friend who's been in my life for quite a few years now. And, just in my opinion, is one of the most inspirational, go-getting type of men I know on this planet. If there's a mountain to climb, literally, or a marathon to run, literally, this is a man that you want on your side. So thank you, Jamin, for being here on this episode of the podcast.
So great, Aaron. It's exciting to be here, man.
Yeah. So I just want to say, we met several years ago. I actually came to one of our living tantra retreats and had a deep dive, and then I witnessed and got to support you through the years, your transition with your now business partner, Jenny. And just what I've seen is a man that has, had a goal in mind and has gone out there pushing the edges of leadership and your own edges of comfortability and uncomfortability, and just said, hey, this is the world I want to create. This is what I want to do. And this is how I want to show up. So I just want to say, from brother to brother, I respect you. I love you. And I appreciate what you do and how you show up on this planet so much, man.
Beautiful. Received, brother. And I mean, I know you know how much love and reverence and respect I have for you, man, as you have been a mentor and a guide for me over so many years. And so it's pretty special to both receive those words and to meet you on the same stage in this podcast.
Absolutely. So let's talk about leadership, because this is a subject I know you guys do these big aligned leadership intensives and really help people find leadership inside yourself. I think the first question I have is, like, what drives you to be a healthy, embodied leader in the world? Like, what is that driving force for you?
Yeah, man, I guess it kind of stems way back. I remember even as like a kid, there were two core themes that ran consistently throughout my entire life, ever since I was about the age of 11, which was sport and leadership. And, I think in the early stages, a lot of my aspiration to be out the front, or, be the house captain or the debate team captain or the football captain, part of it stemmed from, eldest of three boys, and just wanting to receive approval from my dad. That was like a big part of it, or receive approval from like the main authority figure. However, as I've matured over time and done a lot of work around, like, why do I do what I do? And is this a response to like unmet needs as a kid? Or is this actually my dharma and what I'm here to authentically express in the world? And the more I've leaned into that, the more I've recognized, like, wow, no, I've just naturally gravitated towards leadership and being inspired and curious and passionate about leadership all the way through. And it's kind of presented itself in different ways. But yeah, it's like when I experience myself supporting other leaders to step into deeper levels of their authentic expression in the world, I have the experience of like, this is exactly what I'm meant to be doing whilst I'm here on this planet.
Mm-hmm. And in finding those edges, like, what's been, what comes to mind, what's been one of the biggest, like, challenges of leadership? Let's say, I know you're facing them a lot of the time, but that comes to mind. Like, what's one of the biggest challenges that you've gone head to head with in the last year or decade? What arrives for you?
Yeah, nice. So there are two that come to mind immediately. One's kind of like bigger picture, and one's more like literally just like a couple of months ago. So for me, I'm all about aligned leadership, which is it's effectively the deepest embodiment of walking the talk. It's being in touch with who I am and what I'm out to create in the world, and then aligning and leading congruently at the level of individual, at the level of family, at the level of community, at the level of organization, and having everything orient itself to be congruent with who you say you are and what you're out to create in the world. And so alignment or aligned leadership is the core of what it's all about. Now, so when we talk about the challenge for me in walking that talk, well, effectively it's kind of like, well, practicing what I preach, which means the universe is constantly giving me tests and challenges of like highlighting to me where I'm not living congruent or in alignment with what I say I'm all about. And so, you know, man, I think you are intimately in touch with one of the biggest leadership challenges that I've faced, which was, you know, being the founder and leader alongside my business partner, Jen, of Mountains and Marathons, and facilitating this 6-month transformational leadership program called Align, supporting high-performing leaders from across Australia and North America and bringing their life into deeper levels of alignment, and then ultimately graduating by running a marathon or climbing a mountain in some epic location around the world. You know, back in April of 2019, I'd been with Jenny for 18 months at that stage in a romantic context, and we'd been running mountains and marathons for 12 months. And I had the realization that Jenny wasn't my person. She's not the person that I was going to marry. But at that point in time, you know, I remember it so clearly. I was in Mauritius off the coast of South Africa. You know, we just had a really successful day of business and made tens of thousands of dollars in sales. And we went out for a cocktail to celebrate. And I remember like this moment where we cheersed our glasses, and there was such a, you know, spirit of celebration in that moment. But when I took the sip, I just felt this deep, deep heaviness in my belly. And I was like, oh, what is that? And then when I felt through it, I was like, I know Jenny's not my person, but here we are traveling the world, like having this geographic freedom, transforming people's lives, inviting people to, you know, travel the world and take on these epic adventures of running mountains and running marathons and climbing mountains. But Jenny's not my person. And so then, you know, in the spirit of integrity, I communicated that with Jenny, but then both of us were tremendously confronted by what would be the ramifications and impact of us romantically separating. And so it took another 14 months until the two of us actually came together and mutually agreed that we weren't in alignment romantically, and that we would evolve the context and foundation of our relationship to being romantic partners and transition it solely to being best friends and business partners. And so when I talk about it in reference to like a leadership challenge, that 14 months was really because there was an awareness of the misalignment. And then there was an incongruence between how I was being and how we were showing up in the world and what we were teaching. And so I look at that, and obviously the most significant lesson there is the universe is always going to be giving you the tests required to step into deeper levels of what you say what you're a stand for. And then the second thing was like, I got very intimately in touch with what misalignment feels like. So that now moving forwards, whenever that energy shows up in my system, I'm very attuned to it, and then can take courageous aligned action far sooner than, you know, holding off for 14 months before bringing life into deeper levels of alignment. So that's the first one, brother. I could share about the second one, but if you want to deep dive there, mate, that's we can go for it.
Yeah, no, I really celebrate that. What I hear you saying is that you felt a shift in your body, and you could feel that on a mental level. There was a place of, oh, we're traveling, we're teaching, this feels great. But there was something inside the body that said, this doesn't feel right. And you listened, and you listened, and you took action from that place. And I remember times guiding you and supporting you in this journey at the time. And yeah, I just want to like celebrate you, especially as a man, you know, because what I hear you saying is you're listening to the deeper threads inside your body, and you weren't necessarily listening to just your mind. I mean, Jenny's a beautiful, amazing human, and you know, and you guys had a beautiful relationship, but yet there was something else that was guiding you, and you felt that inside your body, and you had the capacity to make the choice. And that's something I see so often. It's like there's a wisdom in the body, and the question for so many people, and I'm sure viewers who are listening, is like, are we actually listening? Are we actually listening to what the body's saying, or are we just continuing to push it aside?
Yes, man. And that's it. And then, cause then it's like, it's a series of steps. Cause one is it's about cultivating the sensitivity to actually listen to what's being communicated. And then from that place, it's one thing to actually get to the place where we can listen and hear what the soul is calling for. And then it's another thing altogether to take aligned action. And that's the jump it's like, okay, now I'm listening. Now I'm in touch with what misalignment feels like. I recognize and I know deep down that change is necessary. But then the next real piece is like, okay, rubber hitting the road and taking aligned action. And I think that's the next step is like, once we're in touch with truth, how do we then align our life with truth?
And align it in a way in which we're not getting, bogged down by this insistent drive to push ourselves, to prove ourselves as worthy. That's one thing I see around leadership is a lot of men especially are leading, but often it's coming from a place of, world, please see me, I want to be seen. And actually, can I just listen to the alignment inside that isn't seeking validation,
Yep.
but is actually just expressing itself through the naturalness within? And that's really how I feel you and how I see you expressed in the world.
Beautiful. Thank you for that reflection, man. I really received that. And yeah, man, I mean, you even look at just the nature of a lot of the men who participate in the Aligned Leadership Program, like typically, high performing corporate leaders who, when they've actually, when they're invited into the deeping questions of like, why do you do what you do? Often the answer is like, well, I've just kind of been doing what's been put in front of me and what I've always been told I should do. But in reality, Jamin, like if you really want to know what I want to do, like what I'd actually love to do is just run a small business where I'm selling coffees in the local corner store. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then, sure enough, across the course of 6 months, we've seen some pretty powerful decisions being made and life reorientations occurring, because it's like, well, we're only here, we only got one life.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact of the matter is like so many people abandon themselves, for what they see as like, making it in a
Mm-hmm.
professional
Mm-hmm.
sense, where they're sacrificing so much fulfillment and contentment and happiness that would be available if they actually listen to what their spirit is guiding them towards, and then
Mm.
just and discovering what shows up when they make those courageous moves.
Mm-hmm. So the discernment between like driving ourselves to be successful and actually driving ourselves to listen to the chords of the soul inside.
That's it, man.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, it just lives inside the spirit of like, does it feel expansive? Does it feel inspiring? Does it nourish the soul? And if the answer is yes, then go for it. If the answer is no, well, look at what it looks like. Really question whether the current trajectory that you're on is going to be of greater service in the now, and then also in the bigger picture. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously the answer is always, it's soul crushing when people continue to stick around doing things that they deep down and surface level resist but pretend to love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure. And so those listening, Jamin and I were just chatting before this call, and we're actually preparing a really exciting trip to climb one of the highest mountains in the world, which I'm a little bit like, oh my God, what are we actually doing? And we're going to speak more into that, but I just want to say, when we were talking, he was doing a check-in, we were looking at dates and things. He was telling me, he's an ultra marathoner. And and I said to him, like, what's the why? Like, what's the why that drives you as a human to, run marathons, not just an ultra marathon at like sea level, but an ultra marathon at high elevations that, like, I think you say like 50% of the people don't even make it. So, and I said, I want to bring that to our podcast conversations. So I knew we were doing this. So I'd love to know your why. Like, what drives you to run marathons at high altitudes, to do the things that you do, like when you've reached that like point and your body's breaking down and you're like, okay, why did I do this? What the fuck am I doing? Like, tell me and everyone else that's listening, I'm curious.
Look, I mean, the funny metaphoric answer would be like, I've definitely got a bit of a loose screw. Like I'm not all there. Like that's that. I think there's something semi factually accurate about that. But no, Matt, beyond that. So I grew up in a incredibly athletic, competitive household. Eldest of three boys. My father was an athlete, and being a professional athlete was ultimately what I aspired to be when I was younger. And then at the age of 10, I had my first knee surgery, having cartilage removed. At the age of 16, I had, again, cartilage removed on my left and my right knee. At 18, I had my first knee reconstruction. 22, I had my second knee reconstruction. And 24, I had more cartilage removed. So by the age of 24, I had 6 knee surgeries. And so in that journey, I'd really had to let go of the vision and dream of being a professional athlete. And So, I sort of reoriented my focus to be more on academics, and then doubling down on leadership coaching and building, organizations that would benefit the community with youth leadership development work. That when I started to like shift my focus in my early 20s, in a way, I kind of abandoned this part of me that really did yearn to express myself fully athletically. And it was across the court, it was over the next years up until the age of 27, where I kind of became a bit of a workaholic, where I was, the way I describe it now is like I was addicted to service, where I was running, two independent nonprofit organizations that were doing great work with young people in Victoria and Australia. But I really wasn't taking care of myself. Like, I was living deeply misaligned, not taking care of my physical body, my nutrition, my social life, like connection with family. It was just all work. And as a result, I was becoming more and more miserable, less and less happy, more and more anxious, and, lacking inspiration. And I remember it was in July of 2016 when I had a breakdown. I remember I was home alone, had my head in my hands, and I started bawling my eyes out. And I was just like, I was 26 years old, and I was like, what the hell is this all for? And then after a couple of hours of having a really heavy emotional release, I had a simple but profound epiphany. I realized, I was like, well, I created this mess. Like, I created all of my suffering. And so I thought to myself, okay, well, if I created this, then I could create anything. I could create my way out of it. And I thought, okay, well, if I could create anything in the world right now, what would I actually be doing? And it hit me in an instant. I was like, like, you give me a blank canvas, I'd be running marathons, climbing mountains, traveling the world, transforming my life, and working out some way to help other people do the same.
Mm.
So I then spent 3 hours downloading this vision, and I called it Mountains and Marathons. And so in that, part of the original vision was, I'm going to run a marathon and climb a mountain on every continent. And the thesis, or the hypothesis was, there is no way that I could do that and be the same person that I am now. So it was this kind of combination of coming from having a real passion for athletic pursuit and pushing boundaries when I was younger, and having that as a dream, but then letting go of that. And then in this moment of, I guess, breakdown / kind of awakening, was then allowing myself to get back in touch with this spirit for adventure, and allowing physical challenge to be a source of transformation. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is, as of right now, I'm 33 years old. When my dad, who I just love and revere so much, when he was 33, he got diagnosed with a chronic cerebrospinal condition, which effectively impacted the message pathway between brain and his muscles on the left-hand side of his body. And so what that meant was, over time, the left side of his body would atrophy, and he would lose muscle. And I remember watching him as a kid, because he was such an athlete. I remember watching him. He'd go for a run, and when he'd return from the run, I'd look at his t-shirt, and on his back there was a line straight down the middle of the t-shirt where half his body was covered in sweat and the other half was completely dry.
Wow.
And so the left side of his body was shutting down. And what I realized, what I got in touch with, is, as I saw my father become more and more decrepit and more disabled, I was like, wow, he was 33 when he got diagnosed with this incurable condition, which, he's 63 now, but struggles to walk and won't be too far out of a wheelchair. I looked at that and was like, you know what, here I am, late 20s. I'm not going to leave this physical body to chance. I'm not gonna wait to find out what this physical body is actually capable of and where my limits are later in life. No, I'm gonna show up, and I'm gonna do that now. I'm gonna discover that now. And then, in time, if my body starts to slow down, so be it. But now I'm going to make the most of this this miracle of a vessel that we have. I'm going to make the most of it now and see what it's capable of. And so, yeah, man, in the spirit of running marathons, climbing mountains, I ran, I think, five marathons. And then I met a guy who was into ultra marathons, and he said, I think this would be up your alley. And, I wasn't really interested in running marathons faster. I was like, cool, like, what's the next level of this? And so that was when I got to discover the world of ultra. So my first ultra marathon was running from Lavina to Seminyak, across from north to south of Bali. And then my commitment has been, once a year, I take on some kind of epic beastie ultra challenge to keep myself sharp and also test what this vessel's capable of.
What this body is able to do. The story I love sharing when I'm like, oh yeah, my friend Jamin, and we're preparing, because last year I got the pleasure of hiking Kilimanjaro with you, and which was amazing. It was something that I'd always wanted to do, and it was incredible to see like your resilience and the capacity to move and get through like so many layers of your physical body at such a high elevation, where you see people just like knocked out and passed out. And I remember you telling me that you were up a few years before that and do like with all of these amazing world athletes and doing a basically an obstacle course at the top of Kilimanjaro. I'm like, who the fuck does an obstacle course at the top of Kilimanjaro? I'm like, I know a guy who does that, and does. You came in like fourth or fifth. I was like,
That's
yeah,
right.
that's the way I usually. I'm like, yeah, if you were to climb and do an obstacle course at the top of one of the highest mountains in the world, and then almost win, yeah, this is the guy. I want
This
to.
is
I
the
want to
guy.
introduce you to Jamin.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, the high altitude bit's interesting because, I mean, that's the big question. Anyone who's stepping onto Mount Kilimanjaro for the first time, or, going to climb a mountain like Aconcagua in Argentina, like, independent of how much physical preparation is done, one of the big questions that always remains unanswered until you're actually on the mountain is, how is your body going to respond in altitude? And, I've been really fortunate, obviously to have a tremendous amount of experience climbing. I've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro 10 times now. I've been to Everest Base Camp twice, and, climbed some other incredible mountains around the world. But I think, I'm fortunately genetically gifted to actually acclimatize and respond really well to altitude and elevation relative to your average human being. And so even the guides of Mount Kilimanjaro who have climbed this mountain like, 150 times, they'll even comment when we get down the bottom, they're like, Jamin, how do you do it? And I remember one time I just said, lots of peanut butter, guys. Lots of
Can't get enough peanut butter.
And they're like, really? And I was like, no.
Yeah, no, it's amazing to witness that, and to see dedication to this path, and to the level of integrity that you bring along the way with it. It's really beautiful to see that. And one of the people listening, one of the things that we are planning, much to my own butterflies burning inside, is that
yes,
the end of February of 2025, we're going to be taking a group of men up Aconcagua, which is the highest mountain in South America. And we have a friend and mentor of mine from many years ago who led a group of guys up there, and so it feels super exciting. One of the things I said to myself, turning 40 this last year, which is one of the reasons I climbed Kili, I said, all right, I'm gonna test my physical body and find where that is each and every year. So we just found out, actually, it looks like I'll be turning 42 at the time in which we'll be probably maybe even summiting, who knows, but around that time. So that feels like such a milestone for me in my own journey between leadership as well as staying and connected to my physical body endurance.
Yeah, man. Yeah. No, it is. It's a real like it's the beautiful meeting place for the two of us too, brother. In the spirit of leadership, as well as satiating this appetite and curiosity for adventure, and really, finding new depths and parts of ourselves that come alive in these, in these adventurous environments. So the prospect of, bringing together a really high performing, powerful group of men to take on Aconcagua and discover, new layers of leaderships and depths of resilience and ways of being in the world. It's really inspiring, really exciting, man. And again, Aconcagua is one that I'm yet to step into. And so I don't think I've got the same level of butterflies that you've got, but there's the spirit of fuck yeah is like right beside.
Oh, that's good. I'm actually glad you have less butterflies.
Yeah.
That makes you feel good. In the spirit of leadership, and also, the work that I know both you and I are doing, as well as seeing what's happening in the globe right now, seeing what's happening on a political standpoint, on a, many different levels. I think the question I bring in, and I'm curious to your take, is with like embodied, true, aligned leadership, how can, this work that we're doing and supporting clients with and helping people come into their, like, can we make a change in the future in terms of what's happening on a global, microeconomic level, on a political level, on all the different very unhealthy forms of leadership that are there? I'm curious, like, what your take is. I don't try to get too involved into all of that, but I also
Mm.
like to be present that there's a lot of things happening in the world right now, especially when it comes to leadership.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, as the eternal optimist that I am, and just the nature of standing for inspiring possibilities for the future, like, I would have to say, like, yes, like, change is possible. But the nature of, like, what I believe is that like, just like any form of change and transformation, it has to start from the individual and it has to start from within. And that's kind of, there's obviously many different ways of initiating and facilitating change in the world, and each person's got to find their own kind of, karmic expression of that. But for me, it's about working with high performing, influential, powerful individuals to be able to support them, to be able to access and, heal that which is not aligned with, their vision for what they want to create in the world, and supporting them to lead from a place of deeper embodied alignment, and then be able to be a model and a transmission of what it looks like to lead authentically at the level of family, at the level of organization. And then if we want to get to the level of systemic change, politicians and some of the world's biggest business leaders, like celebrities, etc., it's about being able to bring some of the most influential and powerful people on the planet to be more in touch with their own integrous expression of leadership, and then being willing to be a stand for the kind of change that we need to see in the world. I mean, so much of the challenges that we face as a society have stemmed from, quite juvenile masculine leadership. And, I really believe that it's the growing up from that juvenile nature where, men can really stand in grounded, empowered, embodied masculine leadership and have mastery in specific, areas of integrity, of emotional mastery, relationship mastery, and actually be able to relate with fellow brothers from a place of collaboration and cooperation, as opposed to killer competition. These are important transformations that need to occur, and I think they really do start from at the level of individual.
Yeah, I love that. And it's what I'm hearing you say is that, there can be, to make the change on the outside, we really have to make the change on the inside. We have to shift the frequency of how we're leading, of how we're showing up as a father, as a business owner, as a partner. It's not just what we're doing in the boardroom, but it's also, connected to the bedroom as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's a big part of, one of the reasons that I've started this conversation and this podcast, is to have these conversations around sexuality and love, and as well as leadership, and to feel this intersection between, the bedroom to the boardroom.
Mm-hmm.
And, it kind of brings me to another point. I know you've kind of publicly shared it as well, but this past year, you've been doing a feminine fast. This
Mm-hmm.
is what you called it,
That's right.
a complete separation from feminine. And I'd love to hear your experience of that, as well as, like, the why behind it. When you first reached out to me, I was like, I celebrate it. I appreciate your sovereign choice. It's not my journey, but I could see how how it could be beneficial. So I'd love to hear, for people listening, what your experience has been with that, and as well how it feels. It's going to be ending, I think, coming up shortly, I believe, and just how that's all present and alive for you.
Yeah, beautiful, man. Thanks for asking. And, again, it's just the nature of, as far as, if we're to zoom out to the highest level, as far as, like, even building off the principle that I was just speaking about, for me, saying yes to this feminine fast, or feminine cleanse, feminine healing journey, is really a part of my authentic expression of growing up, as a part of my journey towards deeper levels of embodied masculine leadership and
Mm.
being the change that I wish to see in the world. Now, totally get that this level, like this kind of initiation, is not for everybody and not necessarily a part of everybody's path. But to share some context as to why I chose to lean into this, and perhaps even before I go there, I might just share, like, what the parameters are, so people have an understanding of, like, what it
For sure,
means to
for
be in a
sure.
feminine
Yeah.
cleanse. So yeah, so in essence, the kind of feminine fast that I've opted into involves no sex, no dating, no flirting, no intimacy, no porn, no scrolling on Instagram, checking out attractive Facebook women on Facebook or Instagram, no seeing an attractive woman and doing the double take, no lingering eye contact with the hot barista, like, none of it, like a complete letting go of all ways in which, as I would describe now, that men get the hit from feminine connection. And so that's kind of what that's what it has entailed. Now, as far as like what inspired this, so in 2022, I was single for the first time in a long time, and have been, I guess, traveling the world and leading mountains and marathons, and had the incredible, space and opportunity to be in connection with some really incredible women. And in that time, like in my heart, in my spirit, I knew that I wasn't available nor seeking committed romantic partnership, but was very much in the spirit of connection and loving meeting new people and having incredibly fun and meaningful connections and experiences. Across 2022, I had a year of like fun. And when I was returning back to Australia, because I'd been away for 3 years, when I was returning back to Australia in December of 2022, one of the first questions on my mind was, I wonder who I'm going to connect with when I'm back in Australia. And sure enough, within a week of returning back to Australia, I had 4 dates lined up. And as I was, and I went on these dates, but what was interesting is in the lead up to these dates, I already knew that there was 2 women who I knew I wouldn't be interested in having a second date with. But there I was, like, saying yes, and I was going to show up and just be in the spirit of connection. And I thought, that's interesting. I'm like, why am I doing that? And then what happened was I started to map out my 2023, and I was gearing it to basically be a replication of 2022 because it was so fun. And then what I did after I'd kind of like got in touch and started like mapping out how fun this year was going to be, I future cast myself to December of 2023, which is literally where we are now. Like I future cast myself to now. And in my body, I just felt empty. Like I felt like empty and unsatiated. And I was like, that's interesting. I'm like, 2022 was so nourishing and so fun and and in a way so fulfilling, but to repeat that would actually be not fulfilling. And I was like, that's interesting. What's that? And then when I felt through it, I was like, 2022, I kind of got to run this teenage energy that had been unexpressed for my, for 15 years or so. And in 2022, I got to run that energy, and that energy has now run its course. And I'm now like ready to mature and evolve into a new level of relating, a new level of being. And so that was kind of all context. Also in December of 2022, I'd been a participant on a 7-day spiritual retreat in Mexico. And the constellation of participants on this retreat was fascinating. I was the youngest male by 22 years. The next youngest male was 53. So maybe it was about 20 years, but he was like 53. And then there were 5 other men who were all older than 53. So that was like, and there was like 7 men. And then there was 21 female participants, with the youngest being like 30 and the oldest being in mid-50s. So it was this really interesting constellation of people. And anyhow, the feedback that I got from the leader of that retreat was, Jamin, you've got work to do around how you show up in spaces around women. And if I was your coach, I'd be telling you to have at least a 6-month feminine cleanse, feminine fast. And so he had like planted this seed and also given me something to look at energetically as far as how I showed up in spaces with women, which like surprised me. And I wasn't quite in touch with what he was speaking about. But that's also been one of the things that I've got to discover intimately across the course of this year. So with the combination of that seed plant, as well as me starting to observe my patterns and recognizing, there's some kind of big initiation in relation to my relationship with the feminine here. When I started to feel into the possibility of doing a feminine fast, I was like, damn, this feels edgy. This feels fucking scary. This feels but I'm like, I want to say it feels unnecessary, but then there's part of my spirit that's like, you got to do this, brother. You got to do this. And so again, similar thing to like, choosing to separate from Jenny. It's just like, all right, there's a choice that, like, yes, you're empowered to choose, but there's also a choicelessness when I'm really, committed to honoring what my soul's calling for. And so, yeah, man, in February, I intuitively felt into what would be the duration of time that I would commit to this. And 12 months was what immediately came through. So I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm going to dedicate myself and commit myself to a 12-month feminine fast beginning in February. And so now here we are in December. It's been 10 months, 2 months to go per se. And admittedly, it has been one of the most transformative journeys of my entire life, which I can speak into all layers of detail, but yeah, I certainly have no regrets. And it's been profoundly insightful and revealed a tremendous number of patterns and layers of my being that I've been able to heal and mature from, and feel very excited about who I get to be and how I get to be in the world as a man and in relationship with women when I emerge from this fast.
Yeah, amazing. Well, yeah, I just want to I celebrate your go-getter mentality. When you told me, I was like, oh no, he's not going to do 3 months. Won't be 6 months. He'll do a year.
Yeah, dude. I don't do anything in halves.
No, and I love that, and I can really sense in what you've gone through and what you're learning from, and then how you get to now show up into ultimately relationship with yourself, but relationship with another. I think it's definitely not everyone's medicine, but I think utilizing it in that way can be super beneficial. Just the question I have, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is like, when I hear that, I would, one of the big parts of how I work with men is kind of the feminine initiation and having men meet their own feminine inside. And so how has the cultivation of your own relationship with your own inner feminine been through this last year? Like, what have you noticed? What have been the challenges? What have been the celebrations?
Beautiful. What a great question, man. And I mean, obviously, yeah, you and I have done so much work, or you've guided me to do so much work around this already. And so, yeah, part of the intent in this was like, really deepening my relationship with my inner feminine in a really distractionless space. So I guess to share just a touch of the journey, in the early stages. So first of all, 2 of the most transformative weeks of this entire journey was the 2 weeks before I started, because in order to step into the feminine cleanse, I actually had to cut all romantic and flirtatious ties with any women who were in my field. And so that, I think I wrote down a list. It included a list of 15 women, of which 5 I was actively in conversation with in a romantic sense. And then there were another 10 where a part of my heart lit up every time I got excited every time I saw their name pop up on my, on my text message thread. And so that was kind of the gauge. It was like anyone who like stirs a little bit of like, oh, it's good to hear from them, they went on the list. And so the first 2 weeks, or the 2 weeks before starting, was actually getting in communication with all of these women and letting them know the choice that I'd made and what my request was of not being in communication for 12 months. Now, inside of that, there were 3 women in particular where I had a deep level of love and actual like attachment to the heart, the fabric of our relationship. And so there were some tremendously vulnerable and, sad and grief oriented phone calls that we had as I was like letting go of the heart of these connections to create the space for me to authentically step into this feminine cleanse. So that was the first part, man, because the insight that I got there was also recognizing, wow, like my heart has not been available for a relationship because the energy of my heart has been dispersed across so many women. And I'm like, that's a cool thing to have distinguished and now actually just come back to a completely neutral, clear plate. So that was like first part. The second part, however, man, was then in honoring every layer of the commitment of, no flirting, no sex, no intimacy, no dating, no Instagram scrolling, was then recognizing how much of I call it the feminine hit, like how much my response in moments, or my reaction in moments when I would be feeling self-doubt, when I'd be feeling insecure, when I'd be feeling vulnerable, that my unconscious default reaction would be to seek connection with the feminine. And so that would be like that would be the phone call, that would be the text, that would be the Insta scroll, like just something that would like give me the hit to take me away from this insecurity or pain or vulnerability that I was feeling. And so it really revealed like the unconscious patterns that I would have to like reach out for external connection with the feminine.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the
Mm-hmm.
first part. So then what happened is, because that was no longer an option, I then started to binge on junk food, drink excessive coffee, binge on YouTube, do deep Instagram scrolls, hang out on Facebook, like all of this, be the pull to watch porn, but not watching porn, but then masturbating, like just all of these dopamine. I'm like, whoa, I've just moved from one dopamine hit to another. And then I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
shit, if I actually really want to get the healing that's available here, I need to go on a dopamine detox. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was when I leveled it. I guess I leveled it up again, or took the next necessary step, which was like cutting all junk food, cutting excessive coffee, no more YouTube, no more Instagram, no more Facebook, being very intentional about when I chose to masturbate and ejaculate. And in that, once I removed all of these hits of dopamine, it was really challenging because I just got bored as fuck. But
What do I do?
what do I
There's
do?
nothing
Like,
to distract
oh
me.
man, just pull me away from the boredom. And so that was part of it, though, was like then learning to sit and be with what was actually there and start to notice all the ways in which historically I would distract myself. And for the
Mm-hmm.
first time in my life, I would actually simply sit and be with and
Mm-hmm.
observe what was showing up. And so whether
Mm-hmm.
that was boredom, whether that was loneliness, whether that was empowering internal dialogue, like whatever it was, I started to create space for just sitting and being with and listening to what was present, what was alive. And then that was when the real healing began, because that was when I got to start self-resourcing and providing myself with with my own love and self-healing journey, which effectively was me then sourcing nourishment from my own feminine and building relationship with her and trusting that and cultivating that internal trust that I've always got me. And no matter what's
Mm-hmm.
going on, I can internally resource and I can be with whatever level of pain and discomfort is showing up in my spirit without the need to seek some kind of reprieve from something out there. I can actually facilitate that and resource internally. So the first 4 months were excruciating. And then after 4 months, I then kind of started to get used to this like being with bit. And then the last 4 months, I'm now at 10 months. So from 6 months onwards, it's actually been quite a profound journey of feeling more grounded and centered and unified within myself than any other chapter and any other moment in my entire life.
Beautiful. Yeah, I really honor your journey, and what I'm really hearing you say is that you've deepened into your relationship with your own inner feminine as once the distractions really fell away and you've been able to ground and land and integrate all of these pieces together more and more. And yeah, when I hear that, I can appreciate the depth of doing an initiation of that level. I think sometimes, and I'm sure you've heard other times, I hear men doing like a feminine fast, and then as soon as they're done, they're back having, 5, 6 lovers and, masturbating every day. It's like, okay, what did you just do? Was there any
That was
shift or change? What
that's
was the purpose of that?
exactly. And that's it's a good point to make, because like, sure, you can say yes to this kind of thing for the challenge, to say that you've done it. But I mean, that's not the game that I play. I'm not interested in that. It's like, no,
Yeah.
there's actually there's a deeper layer to this. But one story I will tell, brother, is like, inside this commitment, like the universe has just continually thrown tests, like to test my resolve. And this was a real like awakening for me. I was in Kauai in Hawaii, the most northwest island, and I'd been there for 5 weeks, and I was absolutely loving Kauai. Like, just every part of that experience was just magic. And part of me was like, I think I could probably see myself maybe living here. Like, I'm vibing with the community, everything. It's like really speaking to my soul. And so I started thinking about, wow, maybe I'd actually live here. And then it was a Friday night. I was leaving on the Wednesday. It was a Friday night. I was sitting on the beach. I lit a fire. And then this guy walked out from one of like the mansions that sit right on the beach of Hanalei Bay. And he said, "Oh, who's the guy in the hat?" And I turned around. I'm like, "Oh, mate, are you Aussie?" And he's like, "No, Kiwi." And he's like, "Oh," and I'm like, "Come on over." So we started having this chat, and he's like, "Look, my name's Matt. Hey, this is cool. Look, I'm having my birthday. It's my birthday today. I'm having a big party tomorrow night. You should come." And I was like, "Mate, I'd love to." And so, I had a bit of a sense of who this dude was, and I'm like, I'm really curious to see, who his community is amidst Hanalei. And and his fiance was a gorgeous woman, and all of this. And so, so I rolled in the following on the Saturday night to this party, and, within 5 minutes of rocking up, this gorgeous, gorgeous woman like comes over and goes, "Hi, my name's Ray. What's your name?" And I'm like, "I'm Jamin." And then she's like, "What do you do?" And I said, I sort of shared a little bit about, I'm a leadership coach. I have mountains and marathons. This is what I do. She's like, "Oh, that's really cool. I'm a life coach too." And then my brain, I'm just like, oh, I'm like, I want to live here. Here we are, in this bloody beautiful spot, woman Ray, like just full of just life and confidence and conviction. She's a life coach, lives here. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, maybe this is just how it's meant to be. Like, maybe I found my person. This is all in a fucking 10 minutes, right?
Of course, as it goes.
Yeah. And then sure enough, she goes, "Cool." So she goes, "Oh, do you want to, shall we head outside?" And I was like, "Sure, sounds great." And I'm thinking, cool, like, let's go and find a spot. We can just like deepen the conversation. This is going really well. And then we go and sit down, and she goes down and sits down on the lap of her friend, and then very consciously sits with her back towards me. And I was left with like, I'm sitting there going, okay, wasn't expecting that. Bit unsure about how to navigate this one right now. Feeling a little bit awkward. Thought we had a good thing going on. Clearly not what you want. And I was then left in this whole world of like, fuck, like, what did I do? What did I say? How did I miss the signs? Like, and then I'm just trying to keep myself busy and occupied talking to other people whilst I'm grieving and in this whole world of feeling like completely rejected. And anyway, as it all came about, like, she was actually hooking up with another dude who became a good friend of mine across the course of my time in Kauai, which I didn't know. But I was just like, it took me like 3 days to get over it. And then I had this realization. Then I had the epiphany of like, fool, like, dude, the universe is watching, man. And the universe is going to keep throwing out these tests. And, are you a man of your word or not? Like, you've committed this 12-month feminine cleanse, but here you are entertaining the possibility of like hooking up and potentially marrying this woman that you've met 6 months in. And I was just left with, okay, I get how this works. Thank you, universe. Got it. You actually have my back. It's a very mean way to give me the lesson. But I hope you're having a good laugh up there, but I've got the message.
Received. Thank you so much. Received completely. Yeah. Kauai is such an amazing island. As you're sharing, I was thinking about a very different story of myself, actually.
Good for you, you asshole.
Yeah, it was a funny story years ago. I won't go into it here, but it's a good one.
Off the record.
Off the record.
That's
But
right.
yeah, man, I just want to appreciate you. I want to appreciate the man you show up as on the planet, and how the level of vulnerability I'm witnessing, even you in this conversation, and just what you're bringing in and what you're communicating. It really is. It's beautiful. I can feel the depth of the beings that you impact with your leadership, with your vulnerability, with your power, and I'm very grateful to have you as a friend, as a brother, as the co-creator in this planet, and super excited about our journey coming up in Aconcagua next year, and it feels absolutely perfectly aligned. So before we close, anything you want to leave with the listeners around what we've been talking about, or if there's something, a short piece around, you should say embodied leadership and really pushing the edges of leadership that would support someone listening.
Nice, man. Well, first of all, thank you so much, brother. And it would be remiss of me not to complete by acknowledging the contribution that you have personally been to my evolution, because who you have been for me is a boundless permission field to lean into my tender edges, to become more and more of myself. And it's a testament to the work that you've done, but then also, you know, I get to be a reflection of the way you choose to be a leader in the world and contribute to people like me. So yeah, man, I want to say thank you, and thank you for seeing me. And yeah, man, like I don't get to be who I am without you, like showing up at the level of authenticity and leadership that you show up from.
Thank you. Fully received. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, man. Nice. Cool. I mean, I think, yeah, in the spirit of, yeah, embodied leadership, or aligned leadership, embodied masculine leadership, like the core of this conversation is, you know, if you're listening to this and there is any part of you that knows that deeper levels of your authentic expression and deeper levels of groundedness and personal power and clarity is available to you, or that's what you're seeking, look to those that have been where you are and done the work to get to a place that you aspire to be. And then listen to those people, because there is, like, success does leave clues, and being willing to, you know, get out of the mindset of like, I'll figure it out myself, and step into layers of courage and humility, whereby there's a willingness to be led. My experience has been, that's what's been some of the most impactful and transformative moments in my time, whether that was working with you, Aaron, or other leadership programs that I've done. Yeah, it's been an in touchness with like, more is possible, more is available, and then being willing to have the humility to seek the guidance of those that are living and breathing what I aspire to live into. And so, yeah, so if that's you, yeah, I invite you to find your leaders, find your mentors. And, you know, if that's Aaron or myself or anybody else, like, really invite the point of connection, because yeah, everybody needs guides as we transition and move through various forms of initiations in this lifetime. And any hero's journey has guides. So that would be the thing that I would encourage anyone listening to feel into and honor.
Amazing. Thank you, brother. And you can find out so much more about Jamin. I think it's mountainsandmarathons.com is the website with everything.
Mountainsandmarathons.world.
.world.
Damn right, man. Damn right.
Boom.
We don't go in halves, man. We don't.
No, not at all. Not at all, man. Well, thank you for being in my life. Thank you for showing up here today. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, this is love, sex, and leadership, and how really humans can show up with more integration from the boardroom to the bedroom and be more alive, charismatic, and incredible humans in the planet. And so we can live and breathe more from the soul. So thank you, brother. I love you. I appreciate you. And I look forward to more creations down the line.
It's so great. Love you too, man. Thanks for having me.